We are in section 4, the information and technology dimension for the release management practice. The syllabus for the exam is to understand and apply how information and technology support and enable the practice. We are going to take a look at the various tools for automation, for the activities, and also there are certain recommendations for automation that need to be applied. In digital environments, this practice of release management is highly automated. Even in legacy environments, there will be, even though a lot of manual activities, the practice can benefit a lot from automation. Now, automation in ITIL means the use of digital technology to enable, support, or enhance various activities. So this is not limited to the full automation of activities where technology solutions remove the need for human intervention. It can mean other automation things as well. This table here lists the various automation solutions possible or tools possible for the release management practice. So we have the workflow management and collaboration tools. Then we have the enterprise architecture tools, monitoring and event management tools, work planning and prioritization tools, analysis and reporting tools, service configuration tools. And on the next slide, we have the CI/CD tools and then the deployment tools. We begin with the workflow management and collaboration tools. So we have here the application as follows. So firstly, to manage the release records, which means release records can be created or updated during the release work. Then we have the support and automation of release models. That can mean doing some coordination during the model development. This is not release execution because for that the deployment tool will be needed. And then we have the communications between the specialists involved in release planning and coordination. So team member communication can happen. And also integration of practices into the service value streams. What that means is there may be other practices that come into picture and all of them can be worked together smoothly using the workflow tools. So there can be practices such as change enablement, incident management, request management, service validation and testing, infrastructure and platform management, software development and management, and so on. Then next we have the enterprise architecture tools, which specifies it is used for the analysis of the product and service architecture, which means it can be used for determining relationships between business processes, the IT products and services, and the entire ecosystem. And that can enable analysis of the product or service architecture and discuss the various release approaches and models that can be made possible. Then we have the monitoring and event management tools, mainly for the verification of releases. For example, it could be to check events which might indicate the changes or updates following a release execution, or it can be also for checking for issues following a release execution. Then we have the work planning and prioritization tools for the release instance planning. So that's ASIS for the release instance planning for individual releases. It can be for resource planning or schedule planning and so on, and to prioritize certain activities as part of the plan. Then we have the analysis and reporting tools, which is for the analysis of the release records and reporting of the release models performance. So that is also straightforward, that narration there. Then we have the service configuration tools, which is for the release model development, release instance planning, and the verification of releases. Now, release model development, yeah, that's understood as is, but the release instance planning can mean for example, to check the relationships among this release components using the service configuration tool. Then when it comes to verification of releases, it can mean to check whether the release requirements were met in the release after it was executed and whether the configurations are as expected after the release was executed. Then we have the CI/CD tool chain, which is for the automation of the release coordination activities and integration in the CI/CD pipeline. So that is noted as is. Then we have, but one thing about the CI/CD tool chain, it will not help to verify that the release was done properly. Then deployment management tools can help to verify components and procedures and for execution of the release models. Now, note here that the verification of the components and procedures is part of the release lifecycle process that we learned earlier, the release planning and coordination process. And under that, there is an activity to verify the components and procedures. And this happens before the release is executed, not after the release is done. So therefore, differentiate carefully between this verification of components and procedures versus the release verification itself, which is done after the release is executed. And then the deployment management tools are useful for the execution of the release models themselves. And so that can mean things like setting up and activating the service components or releasing the physical infrastructure, those things. Then we have certain recommendations for the automation. Firstly, we have the automation of the value stream. That is the first recommendation, which means do not consider just automating certain activities, but integrate into the value stream. For example, there could be an incident resolution value stream, which brings in many practices. So try to automate as much as possible in the entire value stream. Of course, here the focus is the release activity automation, but then do not ignore the overall value stream, because value streams need to be worked on holistically rather than in parts. Therefore, do not overlook other practices that are coming in: deployment, change enablement, service validation and testing, and so on. Therefore, this is where implementing a CI/CD tool chain can be very useful, as we have seen previously on the automation tools table. In that table, that this tool chain can be very useful to integrate the practices. Then also allow for a variety of release models. Do not have just one release model for one product. There need to be different release models for different products. Sometimes even a single product may have multiple release models based on different consumers, or depending on how the product was developed. Was it in-house or a third-party tool, or out of the box, or tailored, etc.? And is it for a specific market? So various release models should be existing, unless the organization delivers only just one product with a single release model. And these tools should also support the various release models and to plan based on the specific model. So tools should not be limited to work on only one or two release models, but all the release models that have been defined and agreed. Then the next recommendation is to automate release management for all product architectures used by the organization, which means we are going into the release approach. So the automation should also consider the right implementation of the release approach. So this is where we have, once again, we're coming back to the architecture could be based on in-house products, third-party developed or off-the-shelf solutions, and tools should support all these models and configurations. Though I mentioned this third-party, in-house, etc. under the release model, and we need to clearly understand that the release models are applicable to specific products, whereas the approaches are applicable to specific architectures.